Hey, this is Brett Latham again, talking about AP for Economics using the Krugman's book. Today we're going to talk about Module 4, Comparative Advantage in Trade. Okay, key concept in this module is two nations that have different opportunity cost can trade, okay? Because one will have the comparative advantage in one of the goods and the other will have it in the other goods. And that always works unless they have the exact same opportunity cost, which seldom happens, and so there'll be gains from trading. Okay, so some quick questions here. First one, where were your shirts made? Yeah, not in the United States, right? What have you eaten today? Burgers, fries, all kinds of stuff, some fruit and all, vegetables. Who grew the food you ate? Well, all I know is I didn't grow the food I ate, okay? Why didn't I perform these tasks on my own? Well, I have better things to do. I'm better at some things, not so great at growing food. Okay, are we better off because we can focus on, in your case, being a student, in my case, being a teacher, while someone else focuses on growing food, manufacturing our clothes? And my answer is yes. Now, my grandma used to sew clothes. Yeah, my wife doesn't do that, and I really don't do that, although I did take bachelor's ed back in high school, and I made myself a pair of swim trunks. They were awful. Never wore them, other than for the final exam or whatever. But nonetheless, that's what, in other words, we focus on what we're good at, somebody else focuses on something they're good at, and then we trade, and everybody's happier. Okay, so we're going to talk about two things here. Comparative advantage. Okay, comparative advantage, whoever has the lower opportunity cost is the one that's going to win that battle. So whatever you have the lower opportunity cost in, the one you give up less to manufacture, that's what you're going to make. And likewise, the other person then is going to have the lower opportunity cost in the other good, and they're going to make that. Okay, that's comparative advantage, and trade is based on comparative advantage, period. Make sure you write that down. Pause, write it down. Okay, absolute advantage. Absolute advantage, yeah, that's a little whatever, we'll be okay. Absolute advantage is who can do it better, who can make the most with the fewest amount of goods. Now, the United States is really good at producing tons of stuff. And so we can produce all kinds of things better than most other countries can, but absolute advantage when it comes to trade doesn't matter. In other words, even if we could produce clothing faster than any other country in the world, because we do other things better, it would still be more expensive for us to produce clothing. That's why we don't do it. Even though we have machines, we'd be really fast, really efficient, the cost of producing clothing in the United States is much higher, and so we don't do it. That's not our comparative advantage. So absolute advantage, one country can have the absolute advantage in both goods, but it doesn't matter. It simply means you can produce the most with the same resources, okay? Most with the same resources. So what's this look like? We're actually going to calculate it. Okay, we've got Germany and France, and our two goods are wine or cheese. That's it, okay? No other options. So Germany can produce 25 bottles of wine. France can produce 50. Germany can produce 30 pounds of cheese. France can produce 40, and let's say that's one person in one day or whatever. Doesn't really matter, but same goods. And so it turns out you look at that, and it's like France is better at wine. France is better at cheese. So that's going to come into absolute advantage, but it won't end up mattering for comparative advantage. And let's see how that works. So how do we calculate comparative advantage? Well, a lot of you, if you took geometry, you might have learned SOHCAHTOA, okay? And SOHCAHTOA, that's a Seminole SOHCAHTOA there for some of y'all. But TOA is tangent equals opposite over adjacent. Well, that's what we have here, opposite over adjacent. So if I want to talk about Germany producing wine or cheese, well, first of all, what's my opportunity cost of wine? Well, it's got to be cheese, right? I got to give up cheese. So I'm going to write cheese here. I'm going to write cheese here, which means over here, this has to be I'm giving up wine. I'm giving up wine. So I write that. See, I got the little line down the middle. So opposite over adjacent. Well, 30 divided by 25. Well, if I simplify that, that's 6 over 5. So 6 over 5. Okay? For France, 40 over 50, that's 4/5. 4 over 5. Now I come over, I want to talk about cheese. Same thing, Germany, opposite TOA, opposite over adjacent, opposite over adjacent, 25 divided by 30 is 5 over 6, and 50 over 40, that's 5/4. Okay? In other words, if Germany has to give up 6/5 of a cheese, so a little more than one cheese, to get a wine, France has to give up 4/5. So if you want to produce wine, who do you want to produce it? Well, the one with the lowest opportunity cost. Well, the one with the lowest opportunity cost is France. So France, 4/5, is going to produce wine. Okay? Well, I said if you have one person has the advantage in one thing, the other person has to have the advantage in another thing. So I already know Germany's going to produce cheese. Check real quick. Less than one, more than one. Would you rather give up less than one or more than one? Well, I'd rather give up less than one. So cheese is going to be produced by Germany. So comparative advantage in wine, France. Cheese, Germany. Why? Lower opportunity cost. Lower opportunity cost. Okay? You got to be working through this with me because you're going to have to work one on your own in a second. Okay? So who's going to produce wine? Well, France, because they have the comparative advantage. Who's going to produce cheese? Germany, because they have comparative advantage. Who has the absolute advantage in wine? Who can produce more? France can. Who has the absolute advantage in cheese? Who can produce more? France can. Okay? So France has the absolute advantage in both. They're more efficient at producing wine and cheese, but no one really cares. But you just need to know it because it might be a question on the AP exam. Will there be gains if the two countries specialize in trade? Okay, the answer is going to be as long as somebody has the comparative advantage, the answer is always yes. Okay, because France is going to be able to produce more wine, Germany is going to be able to produce more cheese, and then they can trade with each other, and they'll both have more wine and cheese. That's gains from trade. Just like when you go to the grocery store, what do? You buy tons of different groceries. Well, it'd be really, really hard and expensive for you to make all those things. So what you do is you do your job and you let them do their job and you trade your wages that you earned and they give you all that stuff and everybody's happier and better off. One other thing I want to point out here. What do you notice about 6/5 and 5/6? And it's the same thing as 4/5 and 5/4. What are those? Well, those are multiplicative reciprocals, right? If you multiply 6/5 times 5/6, you get 1. If you multiply 4/5 times 5/4, you get 1. That's true 100% of the time. If you take those two numbers, the two opportunity costs for France or the two opportunity costs for Germany, and you multiply them times each other and you don't get 1, you made a calculation error. Okay? Always works 100% of the time. Okay. Your turn. So calculate the opportunity cost for Canada and the U.S. for wheat and cone. That's southern for corn. Okay? Cone crop. Okay, so it's not actually cone, it's corn, wheat and corn. So go ahead and calculate the opportunity cost and tell me comparative advantage for wheat and cone. Okay, who has the comparative advantage? Who has the absolute advantage? And then who's going to produce and what are they going to trade? So go ahead, pause the video, do your calculations. Okay, so hopefully you did it, right? Going back through it, if I want wheat, what do I have to give up? I got to give up cone. I got to give up cone. If I want cone, I got to give up wheat. Okay, then SOHCAHTOA, opposite over adjacent. So opposite divided by adjacent is 1/4. 30 divided by 90 is 1/3. 15 divided by 60, 60 divided by 15, opposite over adjacent, is 4. And 90 divided by 30 is 3. Okay, let's say you hate fractions and you're like, Miss Latham, I have no idea which one's bigger, 1/3 or 1/4. Well, that's not great, but it's okay. Let's go over to here, right? You know which one's bigger, 3 or 4. Okay, 3 is less. That means I want a lower opportunity cost. So that's the lower. That's corn. That's the U.S. And so the U.S. is going to produce 30 corn. Well, if the U.S. is producing corn, that means Canada is going to produce wheat. So Canada is going to produce 60 wheat. So Canada is going to do 60 wheat. Okay? So Canada will specialize in wheat, produce 60. U.S. will specialize in corn, produce 30. And they'll trade with each other, and they'll both be better off. The absolute advantage, the U.S. can produce more wheat, and the U.S. can produce more corn. Okay? So the U.S. has absolute advantage in both, which has nothing to do with trade. It's just a nice thing to know. Okay? So moving on. Okay, these are the questions in the back of the module. Generally speaking, these are questions from the first edition. The second edition questions are mostly the same. Every once in a while you may get a different one, but this is really good. If you go through these things, try these things. If you can answer the questions, you're starting to understand what's going on. It'll make class so much more fun if we know what's going on. Okay, so question 1. Read the question and pick A, B, C, D, or E. So pause the video, answer the question. All right. Use the graph to determine which country has the absolute advantage in producing each good. Okay? Well, country A can produce more wheat. Okay? So that's country A. And country B can produce more textiles. Textiles, country B, there, and that gives us an answer of A. Question 2, country A, the opportunity cost of a bushel of wheat is. Okay, look at country A. So pause the video, answer the question. Okay, so find country A. They can produce 100 textiles, 200 wheat. So the opportunity cost of wheat, if I want wheat, is 1/2 of a textile, right? Because I have to give up 1 for every 2. So it's 1/2 a textile, which is answer A. Continue on. Question number 3. Determine which country has a comparative advantage in producing each good. Pause the video. Okay, this one's actually super easy because here you can see the graph. Would you rather have 200 and 150, or would you rather have 100 and 100? Well, in this case, it's really simple. It's not always, usually it's not this way. So it's going to be country A is going to produce wheat. So that's country A, which means country B has to produce textiles. So the answer is A, right? Which country has compared? Yep, that's it. Okay, 2 more questions to go. Okay, if the 2 countries specialize in trade, which of the choices below describes the country's imports? Pause the video, answer the question. Okay, so country A is producing wheat. So country A is going to import textiles. So that gives us those 2 choices. And since country B is going to be producing textiles, they're going to import wheat, which is answer D. Okay, last question. What's the highest price country B is willing to pay to buy wheat from country A? Okay, so country B, so pause the video, answer the question. Okay, country B, they can produce 1 wheat for 1.5 textiles. Okay, so they're not going to pay more than 1.5 textiles to get a wheat. Okay, because they can do it themselves. So it's going to have to be something less than 1.5. So the highest price they would pay, you could say, you can go with D, is they're not going to pay any higher than 1.5. Actually, I would say they wouldn't pay any higher than 1 because they're not actually going to pay 1.5, but they're not going to pay any higher than 1.5 because that's what they can do it themselves for. So that's trade and comparative advantage. We'll work some more in class, and of course you should work some more in class too. And that's it for Latham and AP Economics for today.